What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Redhead MMA. And earlier today, Dana White made some huge announcements for UFC 323 at T-Mobile Arena in December, the last pay-per-view of the year and the last ESPN pay-per-view, last UFC pay-per-view of all time, basically in the US. Um, After this fight card, the UFC will be transitioned to Paramount Plus. So if you have a subscription to that, the UFC will come free with that. So that's going to be huge. So yeah, and to start off these announcements, the main event will be Merab Dvalishvili versus Piotr Jan 2 for the Bantamweight Championship. It is so sick that a week and 2 days after he fights, Merab already has another fight lined up for this year, his fourth title defense of this year. If Merab wins this fight, some serious conversations are going to have to be had about his standing among the greatest of all time. He's already the bantamweight GOAT. Pretty much, I'd say he's unanimously considered the bantamweight GOAT at this point. There are probably still some Dominic Cruz diehards out there that are going to stand with him forever. But I think if Merab wins this fight, he's I think he's already undeniable as a bantamweight GOAT, but he'll be like fully undeniable, and he is gonna be up there in terms of the best of all time. Um, so that's cool. But back to the actual fight, I'm leaning Merab in this fight. Uh, Merab is gonna do. He's able to do exactly what he did in the first fight and just drown Piotr Jan with his cardio. Even if he doesn't land every takedown, which he's going to not land most takedowns, he's going to keep going and going and going and going. And that's how Piotr Jan lost that fight. But, sorry, Merab is a lot more well rounded on the feet now as well. He almost TKO'd Corey Sandhagen in the second round at UFC 320. If you told me a year ago that Merab was going to be within a couple strikes of TKO and Corey Sandhagen, I just wouldn't believe you. So that's like that's a huge thing. And Piotr Jan, he's aggressive. But he is more of a point fighter, and Marab's not afraid to like go for a finish. So so with that more well-rounded striking that he has now, along with his cardio that's just getting better and better, I'm leaning Merab in this fight. Obviously, that can change as we get closer to the fight. It is still only October. We're not even halfway through October yet. We're talking about a fight card that's in 2 months. But I am leaning Merab at the announcement of this fight. Um, the next announcement, which I'm actually even more excited for. Actually, I want to mention one more thing. About Piotr Jan. I feel like I've talked only about Merab, very little about Piotr Jan. Piotr Jan's having a second wind in his career, uh, and that's cool. I love that Piotr Jan's having a second wind. I really like Piotr Jan, but when I think about the caliber of competition that Piotr Jan has had at this second win in his career. And it's not that it's been bad, he has wins against Figgy and stuff like that, but his latest win was a decision over Marcus the Maniac McGee. Uh, so, do with that information what you will. But I just think that, even though Piotr Jan's been doing great recently, he's been doing great against a level of competition below what who Merab has been dominating against. So that's my last thought on that, just because I feel like I dedicated that entire segment to Merab. The next announcement that I'm even more excited about, actually, is Alexandre Pantoja versus Joshua Van for the flyweight championship as the co-main event of this pay-per-view. Um, and I'm so excited for this event because I genuinely have no idea who's gonna win this fight. Um, Joshua Van hasn't really been tested in his grappling, so that's a huge factor in it. Pantoja might be able to just smother him and get a submission easily, but Joshua Van could have some really good takedown defense, and I really think that Joshua Van has better striking than Pantoja. So if that's the case, Pantoja could be able to get a relatively easy win. Van could be able to get a relatively easy win off of Pantoja. So I'm really excited for this fight. I really have no idea how it's going to go. I'm not even going to give an early prediction on this one yet because I could see it going either way. I really have to think about this, watch their old fights, but it's really insane to think about how 5 fights ago Joshua Van got knocked out by Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson still posts about this like 5 times a day about how he beat Joshua Van and how he really deserves the title shot. He doesn't actually post that, but he does post all the time about how he beat Joshua Van, and now Joshua Van's the one fighting for a title. I love Joshua Van. He's my favorite fighter in flyweight right now. I kind of hope he wins, but at the same time, Pantoja's a dog. He's an absolute animal. He's been doing great during his title reign. He's in his prime right now. Um, but you know, it yeah, this is really just such a hard fight to judge because you know Pantoja, as dominant as he is right now, in his last 2 fights against uh, Kai Kara France, Kai Asakura, in his last 2 fights, you know these guys, they're not all that. Um, it's like I hate saying that, but at the same time, they're really not all that. Everyone was hyping Kai Kara France up going into that card as this like absolute demon. They were hyping up like he was King Von, um, and he's not. And same thing went for Kai Sakura. I remember watching clips of Kai Sakura that the UFC was posting on their official YouTube channel going into that pay per view. I think it was UFC 310, and like I realized when I was watching those clips, I was like, all right, this is all really cool and stuff like that, but this is a these fights are all against like Ryzen guys. This is Ryzen Fighting Federation, and the only notable fight that Kasakura really had, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like, did he even fight Manel Cop? I could have sworn I saw on YouTube he fought Manel Cop at some point in Ryzen, but I could be wrong with that. It could have just been a Manel Cop fighting against some random that I watched. But Ryzen's really not that good, and Yuri Prohaska's like the only guy that's even notable that the UFC's gotten from Ryzen. That win against Kasakura has not aged well, especially since August when Tim Elliott, of all people, submitted Kasakura in the second round. And there's also the win against Steve Erceg. A lot of people called that a robbery when it happened. I personally thought Pantoja won, but I think most people have come to that conclusion nowadays. I see very few people still calling that fight a robbery. But at the time, it was like it was a very pulverizing win. Like a lot of people really didn't think he won that fight. Because he got outstruck. He basically had to resort to lay and pray the entire time. And Steve Erceg hasn't exactly been doing great recently either. He most recently beat Ode Osborne. Thank God, if he didn't beat Ode Osborne, he would have had the quickest rise and fall maybe in UFC history from, title shot to damn near unranked. That would have been tragic because I actually really like Steve Erceg. But yeah, this is a great, great fight. I have no idea who's going to win. This was my favorite announcement of that live stream. Next up, this is the funniest one to me because I think this is just bad matchmaking. Um, Henry Cejudo versus Peyton Talbot. Henry Cejudo's about to slime out Peyton Talbot. I have no idea who thought like, oh yeah, you got to win over Felipe Lima. Let's give him to Henry Cejudo. Like, who in their right mind thought that was a good idea? Like, listen, I know Henry Cejudo is on a 3-fight losing streak, but like, he's not that bad, guys. Like, come on. I feel like gotta give him, is Peyton Talbot ranked? Hold on, let me check if Peyton Talbot is ranked because I was about to say at least give him one more ranked opponent. I have to actually check if Peyton Talbot is ranked, but I don't think he is. If he is, very low. Yeah, Peyton Talbot isn't ranked. Henry Cejudo is still in the top 10 of bantamweight. Like, come on, I feel like give him one more opponent in the top 15 before you hand Peyton Talbot over to him, because Peyton Talbot is terrible at grappling. This is such a mismatch. This is like if Henry Cejudo actually is smart, which that's also a coin flip whether he's gonna be smart in this fight or not. But like if he just sticks to his wrestling, Henry Cejudo is going to destroy Peyton Talbot. Peyton Talbot proved in the Barcelos fight that he can't grapple. And I'm hoping that he worked on grappling in after that fight. He didn't have to use that much against Felipe Lima. He was able to outstrike him, I believe, in rounds 1 and 3 or 2 and 3. Can't really remember. But I know he won 2 out of those 3 rounds in that fight. But yeah, I think this is an absolute mismatch. I think it's hilarious, and I'm already gonna predict that Henry Cejudo is gonna win this fight by decision, and I don't see myself changing that in the near future. And the last announcement that actually kind of evaded me, I must have not been listening too well, was that Jan Blachowicz will be fighting Bogdan Guskov. And I am kind of leaning Guskov in this fight. It pains me to say, but Jan Blachowicz is kind of washed up. He hasn't won in over 3 years. Like we're coming up to almost 3.5 years since his last win. It will be over 3.5 years since his last win by the time he actually fights. He's not the same guy that he was when he was light heavyweight champion. I'm just going to check his. Yeah, this is also insane ranking. He's number 4 light heavyweight, and he hasn't won since May 2022. He lost, and listen, he lost 2 of those by split decision against Ankalaev and Pereira. Funnily enough, 2 guys that fought for the belt almost a week and a half ago. But Carlos Ulberg, Snoozberg brought him to a boring decision. These aren't bad losses, but at the same time, Bogdan Guskov just had a delicious KO against Nikita Krylov. Like, I remember actually watching that fight at work. And I saw it, I was like, damn. But yeah, so I'm leaning Guskov right now just because he has momentum. He's on a win streak. Jan Blachowicz is 42 and on a 3-fight losing streak. Yeah, I'll flesh this opinion out more as we get closer to the fight card. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's just sad. with Jan Blachowicz. Uh, he just isn't the same fighter that he used to be, and you really can't expect him to be the same fighter that he used to be. He's 42 years old. And again, these aren't bad losses, so I really do have to think about this before I just blindly choose Bogdan Guskov. I really hope this fight ends early as well, because if not, it's going to be an absolute snooze fest to the end because these guys both have awful cardio